Is this just another gimmick or someone trying to reinvent the hair extension wheel? I honestly asked myself that when I first saw this video, but then one of my husband friends asked me, what is the point? And I said, well, if someone had to do an MRI scan, for example, with nano hair extensions, you use a metal bead, but with this, you don't need a bead, so it solves that problem. I then began thinking more about why this actually might be worthwhile and how going forward, it might actually problem solve some of the obstacles people face with the typical nano install. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm a hair extension specialist and educator, and I've been installing hair extensions for the last 13 years. If you like hair extension education, then don't forget to like and subscribe. And you can also follow me on Instagram, @SamHair, and TikTok, ExtensionistLA, for more hair extension tips and tricks. There is always something that comes along within the hair world that seems groundbreaking, but in the end, the hype dies down and it just becomes a has-been. I really don't think that that's the case with nanos. They've been around for years, as have K-tips, so combining the two methods is honestly pretty genius. Think of it, you're using the nano hair almost like a K-tip, so you are getting the reusability factor of the nano, but also the weightlessness of a K-tip. So let's get into the install and we can talk a little bit more about the technique, but also why this is great to have within your hair extension arsenal. So obviously from the video, we saw that the lady was using these, which are nano hair extensions. She actually made hers herself. These are actually already pre-made from Covey, and I love working with this because of the cord that the Covey nanos have. So I'm going to be working with these today. And then of course, we're going to need our K-tip application tool. So I'm going to be using this. It is from L Pro Hair Extensions, and this is my favorite keratin tool to work with. I love how small the little fusion points are. And then of course, can't forget about our keratin grains. So for today, I have the option, I can use a clear or a slightly colored one. I think I'll probably use this one. It's a little bit of a translucent colored grain that has a little bit of a warm honey tone to it, which is the tone of the hair that I'm going to be working with and the tone of my mannequin. So the exact color is actually blonde. Love this. These are actually from a brand that I just discovered a couple of months ago, and it's called Max Hair. So definitely look into their keratin. I really, really like it. And then of course, for removal, which I will show you guys, I'm using these pliers from L Pro, which I absolutely love. These are amazing. I love that they're smooth, so they don't cut the client's hair. And then comb is YS Park. You guys know I absolutely love this comb. I have it linked in my Amazon storefront, as well as all the clips I'm using. So I'm using the Framar Big Bite clip and the Framar Tight Tension clip. I'm also using these duckbill clips, generic duckbill clips. And again, everything I have linked in my Amazon storefront. So for today, I'm only doing the technical side of the install. If you're really interested in this technique and you'd like to see a full head install, leave me a comment down below. I'm definitely so down to do that. And I think I'd love to try it out on an actual model. But for today, I'm just going to be installing a few of them so that you can see that technical side of the install. So I'm not going to use a shield today. I'm actually going to use this. It's the duckbill clip that I mentioned earlier. And my section size is actually going to be exactly the same as how I always section for my K-tip extensions. So if you're wondering what that looks like and you'd like to see a full head of the keratins, check out my other videos because I have a ton of them linked on my channel. All right, let's go. So I'm going to drop down and then go straight across. Make sure my section is nice and clean. So that is my section size, nice and clean. And then I'm just going to put my duckbill clip underneath to isolate my section. Once I've got my section, that's when I'm gonna pour out my keratins, and I'm gonna use a grain at a time. I don't wanna overload it with keratin. So let me pour a few out. I love this mat. It's a little heat protective mat. Again, Amazon, and I'm gonna pour out my keratins here. And like I said, I'm just gonna use a grain at a time. So let's pick up one of the grains with my tool, and we can just gently heat that up. Now that I have that all heated up and melted, I'm going to take my Nano hair extension, and we are going to put this underneath the hair here. And then now where the tip is here, that's where I'm going to adhere my keratin. And then we are just going to roll that into place. And that is your first little keratin nano. Look how discreet that is. I absolutely love it. So now let's kind of talk about who this is good for, why you might use it as opposed to a bead. So I kind of mentioned it a little bit when we were talking in the intro about MRI scans. So I have recently had a lot of clients that are needing to go for MRI scans, and with those scans you can't have any sort of metal in your hair, whether it is a weft or a nano or an I-tip, and for that reason I'm having to remove all of their extensions. They have to go for a scan and then come back and do a reinstall. So this would be great because it eliminates that factor of the metal bead, so they can still go and have their scans done without having to take anything out. Another reason that I like this is the reusability factor. K-tips can be retipped, but it is a lot of work. Another thing that you have to consider is every time you remove and rebond the K-tip, you're losing a little bit of the length, and also you have to factor in the fact that these shed as well. They shed during the wear, they can shed during the retipping process, so you're never going to have the exact same amount of grams that you started with as when you finished. However, with the nanos, you're not going to lose any of the length because all you're doing is removing and then putting fresh keratin. You're not having to cut anything or retip anything, which is really nice. So let me do another one. And then again, I'm just going to literally do it side by side, the same as what I always do with my nano and my keratin installs. Then again, just isolate that section with my clip. And I'm going to pick up a grain. I actually think 2 is better. I don't think 1 grain is enough. So I'm going to pick up 2 little bits of keratin on my tool. Make sure it's all nice and melted. And then I'm going to pick up my extension. And then again, just put that underneath. And then just roll that into place. I think these are so seamless. Can we get a close-up shot of this? Look how good that looks. It honestly looks so invisible, you guys. It's unreal. And I do think that by using the 2 grains instead of the 1 that I initially thought, it's better because you get a better amount of keratin on there, and you can see it's going to be a lot more durable. One thing that I always have, here's a little top tip. I always have a little bit of a rag nearby so that I can kind of just wipe off my tool as I go. I don't want like an excessive amount of keratin on here, because then over time your bonds are going to look really messy, and then it can also burn the keratin as well, and you don't want burnt bonds. All right, another question that I feel like people might have is about why you would use this as opposed to a bead. So why you would use this as opposed to a bead is because if you have someone that experiences a lot of slipping when they wear the nanos, maybe the bead is just not working for them, maybe their hair is just really, really fine, really oily and prone to slipping, this could solve that problem as well. I do feel like with the right amount of keratin, it is going to stay in the hair and it's locked in. So for people, maybe just in certain areas where they experience the slipping, you could replace it with the keratin ones instead of the beaded ones. All right, let's do another one. Again, I'm just doing it directly next to the last one. making sure my section's nice and clean. And I'm just going to use my clip to isolate that section. Picking up 2 grains, because I learnt my lesson. 2 grains is definitely better than 1. And just making sure they're nice and melted. Okay, one thing I'm going to note is this is definitely more time consuming than doing a normal keratin or even than doing a nano. So I definitely feel like there's a way where I'd have to streamline this process and make it a little bit more quicker, because you're almost kind of like bonding everything in the hair. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I also have a private members page on here. So if you really want more detailed education and super close-up detailed videos of an install start to finish, then definitely check out my private members page on here. I love it because I can really go into detail on there, and I try and upload at least a video a week on there, sometimes more, and some of them are kind of short and it's like quick tips and tricks. And then I just uploaded one yesterday that's like a 5-minute long video of a full row of weft and a little bit of a different way to install your weft. So if you're interested, definitely check that out. So a question that I was thinking actually about maintenance on these was how that maintenance would look. So with these, it would be more like a keratin where you would leave them in the hair, you'd leave them for 3, 4, maybe 5 months, and then you remove them, but then you reinstall using that same hair, but just fresh keratin, unlike a nano. So the one thing that I do really like about the nanos with the bead is the fact that you can move them up. So it's like a weft or an eye-tip. Every 4 to 6 weeks, you can do a remove up, and you can do that twice, and then you would do a reinstall. I do think that the nano install is quicker as well because it's the bead and you're just working through it. Rather than this, it's a little bit more time consuming. Right now, obviously, I'm just testing it out, so it is taking me a little bit longer, but I still think that a keratin is quicker to install unless you work with an assistant that can load up your tool, put the keratin on it, and then just hand it to you, and you just keep working. So I feel like that would be a quick way to install these, is to have someone that's like loading up your tool for you with the keratin. All right, so I'm just going to keep working. We pick up another one, pick up some grains of keratin and melt that, making sure that I'm putting enough on there. I don't want to run the risk of not putting enough keratin on there, because then if you don't put enough keratin on there, they're definitely going to slip and they're not going to stand the test of time. So definitely something to bear in mind when you are doing this is to make sure that you're using enough keratin. And if you install them and you feel like there's not enough on there, then you can definitely go in and just top up your tool and then top it up a little bit more. You don't want them to slip. But so far what I'm finding is they're actually really secure. They're not going anywhere. Even when I was just playing around with removing them, I was like, wow, these are really in there. It's good. I'm also finding that this could be a great way to make the tip of these stronger. So what I'm finding is I do have people that will come back. Maybe I've done like 2 move ups, I'm doing a reinstall, and I find that this has softened a little bit. So right now, because it's fresh, it's more stiff, but I am finding that over time it can soften. So a really good way that you can fix that is just by putting a little bit of keratin. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of keratin here, and I can just put a little bit on the tip of this and just roll it. And then that way it's just making it a little bit more stiff. So then over time, if these soften, you're kind of just like fixing that issue as well. So for the removal, I'm going to use these pliers, the ones I showed you earlier from El Pro. Love the fact that they're smooth. And you can use a little bit of alcohol as well, just to saturate the bond. But I do find that this keratin is really soft, so I don't really have to use the alcohol. I can just use the pliers. And then all I'm going to do is just go in and just break down that keratin with my pliers, exactly like how I would do for a normal keratin removal. And then I can just slide out the bond. And then with the excess keratin that's left at the end, can you see there? You've got that keratin left. All you're going to do is just take your tool and just melt it off. And just freshen up that bond. And then that's ready to reinstall. How easy is that? Love it. Super simple. Okay, guys, so now you've seen it for yourself. What do you think? I honestly think that there are so many reasons why this is amazing. And even if you still want to use the bead, which I will for ease and the fact that I can do quick move ups in between reinstalls, it's taught as a way to also troubleshoot some problems, which as stylists, we might find with a standard Nano install. So, as always, thank you all for watching. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It really helps as it allows me to continue to make educational content like this for free for you guys. Everything I've used today, I'll link in my Amazon storefront, and the hair you can find from Covey Hair. They sell both the Nano extensions and the beads. And of course, don't forget, if you want more in-depth content like this, hit that subscribe button for my educational channel where you're going to find exclusive content. And like I said, it's only $14.99 a month. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
That's a wrap.